things I learned about med school that I didn't know until I started med school. Number one is that most people are not going into med school blind. Most people have a sibling or a parent that has gone through med school or is a doctor. So they have some kind of exposure to not just the medical field, but like being a doctor specifically, or med school and the medical process of residency, med school, all of that. I didn't realize that. Like, I just assumed, like, oh, we're all med students, we're all going through this, like, for the first time together, until I had conversations with my classmates, and, like, so many of them were like, oh, yeah, like, when my sister went to med school, when my mom, like, took STEP, or whatever, like, I did not realize how many people had a direct relation to a doctor. I just assumed, like, you know, like, and I didn't realize how important that exposure was. You know, I just thought that, like, you know, everyone... You know, like, you're going through med school for the first time, like, who cares if your parent is a doctor? I didn't realize that, like, having that exposure could give you an upper hand in terms of just, like, knowing what to expect, right? 2, med school is not at all like the MCAT. I was so worried when I was studying for the MCAT and taking the MCAT that med school was going to be, like, worse. Because I was like, if this is the exam to get into med school, I can't even imagine what med school is like. It was nothing like that. Like, the material that I studied on the MCAT, never needed again. You know, like... I've never taken an exam like it. If that's stressing you out, don't let it stress you out. If that's making you think like, damn, can I do med school? Don't let it scare you. 3, the material in med school is not hard, but med school is hard. And so what I mean by that is most of the material in med school is pretty straightforward, or you could grasp it, study it, whatever. It's not the material that's hard, but there's a lot of it. And so in order to like understand all of it, studying for med school is very hard. So by no means am I saying med school is not hard, because it is, but the material is not the thing that should scare you. 4, sometimes you have to sacrifice a topic. If you're studying for an exam and one topic you really can't grasp, make sure you study everything else, because I realize like sometimes you just got to take an L on one topic. Like, yeah, you might miss those questions, you might have to guess on those questions, but it's not worth spending your entire time studying that one topic and like neglecting everything else. 5, it's not about how many hours you study, it's more about how effectively you're studying. So you could study for 2 hours and it'd be effective 2 hours, versus you could sit all day at the library and get nothing done. So like, figure out what works for you, but don't sit there forcing yourself to like just waste time, because if you think that sitting for 6 hours means you've studied but you're not like getting anything, that's not helpful. Don't do that. 6, you're not gonna get a lot of exposure in terms of any specific specialty until you get to your clinical years. My med school, like, we did like a couple, like, I think like one lecture on like peds, so like there was like no peds exposure, barely any OBGYN exposure. All of that happened. We had hospital visits, so like we did that, but mainly in your clinical years is when you're gonna actually get exposure. Your preclinical years are more so for just learning the basics on everything.